Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.
Today we're discussing Nobel Prize winner Kazuo Ishiguro's latest book, Clara and the Sun. Set somewhere in the United States in the near future, the novel is narrated by Clara, an android designed to provide companionship for children. In the world of Clara and the Sun, most wealthy families pay to have their children lifted, a genetic engineering procedure that enhances academic performance. But before we get into all of that, I want to welcome my guest, Doug Farnwell.
Hi, Gail. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so good that you said yes. And when this word jumps out, dystopian, we see that in so many titles or in promotional
I think it's one
material.
of the most common subgenres of science fiction. Even if it's not considered a dystopian novel per se or a dystopian movie per se, I think those themes come up quite often.
Okay, dystopian.
It's the opposite of utopian. So if you think of a utopia as a perfect society where all that is good about our civilization is magnified, a dystopia is a civilization, a culture, a society where some of the flaws are exaggerated to draw attention to them. So anyone who writes a dystopian novel, makes a dystopian film, is really commenting on problems they see in current society.
Well, I just think that's an excellent definition, and I knew you were waiting to talk about that. This book, Clara and the Sun, of course, the sun features greatly in this book, and there's just so much going on that was new to me. Let's talk about this. Well, you're getting ready for food. Let's talk about that.
Well, I'm chopping while we talk because there's a lot of it to do.
And what are you chopping?
I'm chopping some kohlrabi. As we were talking about the menu, we decided rather than do genetically engineered foods, that we would just go with something simple, K for Clara. And so I'm doing a kohlrabi gratin.
Yes.
Which is, it's like au gratin potatoes.
Yes.
You know, a Hoosier staple, but you can do them with any root vegetable. So I'm using kohlrabi, but you could use jicama, you could use celeriac, you could use turnips, parsnips, whatever.
It's like the autumn dish that you see. I love that kind of food. I grew up on kohlrabi. My family had it all the time with all those other things you mentioned. So to get into this book, we have to talk a little bit. Well, the sun is very important, but the idea of uplifting your child, it doesn't mean that you're going to sing with them or you're going to make them feel happy, but
they
what
actually
is it?
They modify the genetics. And almost everything in this book you can find other examples of in other science fiction, particularly. So when you talk about lifting, I'm reminded of the movie Gattaca, where those individuals who had been genetically enhanced had one career path, one life track that left those who were not enhanced in the dust.
In the dust. And this is about that kind of idea,
it is just like that. Now, they don't get into the details of it, because again, this is told from Clara's point of view.
And she is?
She is an artificial friend.
Yes. And these children that are uplifted and so smart, they now have artificial friends. Why is that?
Well, it's not really ever addressed, other than it's really sort of the same way that nobility would have private tutors and private nannies and au pairs for their children.
They're uplifted.
Right, they're uplifted. They have an adult who has their total attention. That's all they do is take care of the child, and it leaves the parent free to pursue whatever got them to that point in society where they have the time and the income and the resources to engage this help for their child.
Let me just interject here that I am making food beginning with K, because like you said, we don't have any engineered food. Right. I'm making kielbasa, and then kraut, sauerkraut. And then I'll have some sliced kiwis. And you'll say, whoa, what kind of a diet? But you add the kohlrabi, and you've got something else that you're going to add.
We're going to have a drink called a Kir Royale.
Oh, I love Kir Royale.
And if we have time, we'll even make a key lime pie.
Yes, if we have time. So now you understand the scene here. This Clara is a doll.
A humanoid robot, an android.
Yes, and she sits in the window in the store. And parents walk by and look at her. She's with her friend Rosa. They're hoping to be purchased by a family.
Right, because they're programmed to want to have a home. They're
Yep.
programmed to want to take care of the child in their charge. You know, so they're programmed with a certain amount, excuse me, of emotional intelligence.
And see, this is dystopian, all right. So what do we talk about when we say some of these children are uplifted? What about the rest?
Well, they're kind of on their own. And that's where the dystopia sort of comes into it. Although I think Ishiguro does something pretty wise as a writer, doesn't really address it and say, this is a dystopia. This is the problem. But for example, Clara's charge, Josie.
Josie. She's a young girl who has been uplifted. She's becoming ill.
Right. Her parents are not together. The father is not part of the picture. Her best friend, Rick, who is not lifted, his father is not part of the picture. And we later learned that Clara's father is referred to as post-employed. So he's been substituted.
He's been substituted, and many people today are in the same situation, aren't they?
And that's the example of the dystopia. They're taking something that we are dealing with,
Yes.
and exaggerating it and bringing it to the forefront. So why is he substituted? Because jobs are becoming automated.
The sun is so important in this story, Clara and the sun. Why is she so hung up on the sun?
Well, she's solar powered.
She needs the sun.
And in this, it gets into, I think you could argue this talks a little bit, Ishiguro's talking about a little bit of the origin of spirituality in societies, and also uses it as an example to talk about gender issues, because in the store, Rex, another android, another artificial friend, refers to girls as greedy. So the robots are gendered. They're not biological organisms, but they're gendered by their manufacturer.
So Clara is in the store with her friend Rosa. They see a young girl and her mother walk by, and before long, they kind of communicate through the window. I don't know how, but eventually, Josie's family buys Clara for Josie. Josie needs a friend, and she's not feeling well. She's been lifted genetically.
Well, and a potential side effect of being lifted is that can come back and cause illness and even death. We don't know this right away, but Josie at one point had a sister, Sal, who was lifted, became ill, and died from the procedure, from side effects of the procedure. And that influences a lot of the book in ways that don't become obvious until later in the story.
Well, the first 50 pages, I'm trying to get straightened out what this is, and there's a Cootings machine outside the store that's blocking the sun, and of course the robots need this solar power to operate, and the parents are wondering if they're going to buy this Clara. How is she going to be? Is she going to be like their daughter? Is she going to inhabit the daughter?
Well, and
what
again,
happens?
You're foreshadowing a little bit further into the story.
I am.
But yeah, as far as we know early on, it's just a companion for the daughter. But the mother does have ulterior motives.
Chrissy.
Chrissy.
Chrissy the mother.
Only referred to as Chrissy by other human friends. So Helen refers to her as Chrissy. Clara always refers to her as mother or the mother.
The mother. And Helen.
Helen is...
Talk about Helen.
Helen is Rick's mom. Rick is Josie's best friend.
The one that is not going to be lifted. He's going to be left out in the cold, right?
And they're just starting, Rick and Josie are just starting to learn what that means. Because they've had plans, as little kids do. I think a lot of A lot of little kids, get married on kindergarten playground. And so Josie and Rick have plans to spend their whole lives together. They're best friends.
Well, so this is the beginning of the book. And they don't eat anything, so that's why we're cooking with words that begin with K for Clara.
Robots have notoriously light appetites.
Yes. We are going to take a little break right now and get ready for the next part. But we want you to see our menu, what we put together with Kay. Take a look. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Kazuo Ishiguro is our author today. My guest is Doug Farnwald. Our book is Clara and the Sun, and you are making a scrumptious-looking sauce. Tell us about it.
Well, for the gratin, which is cheese and cream sauce, like any other, I started cream sauce. It's half and half, some stone ground mustard, and then I'm using garlic and dill and thyme. So I just brought that up to a low boil, let it simmer while I assembled the casserole, as it were. And that's just layers of sliced kohlrabi with Gruyere and Parmesan. And just build them up layer by layer.
This is going to be good. I can just tell.
And just leave the sauce simmer while you're doing that. And we're just going to pour that over the top.
Beautiful.
And some people might use a little flour to thicken the sauce, but it's going to be absorbed by the kohlrabi, and it really doesn't need to be thickened. So you don't need to make a roux or anything like that to begin with. That will all get absorbed.
No roux today.
And then we're going to finally top it with another layer of cheese.
Cheese is like one of the most favorite attributes or additives to dishes today. Went out to eat, and they wanted to put cheese on my spinach and on my chicken and more on my salad. And I thought, I didn't order all this cheese.
So I'm using Gruyere and Parmesan, but if you like some other cheeses better, you could use that. That's the nice thing, really, I think, about dishes like this, is they're very simple. Again, it's mostly started out as peasant food.
Yes, kohlrabi is not considered, like asparagus or even broccoli. It has its attributes, though. It's good for you.
Well, it's one of the cruciferous vegetables, so it's related to cauliflower, broccoli, kale, spinach. They were all originally genetically descended from wild mustard plants, so they were not genetically modified.
You've learned it here,
but they were selectively bred. So we're going to cover that with foil tightly.
You want me to open the oven?
And we're going to bake it for 45 minutes at 400. So, and we're not going to actually make everyone sit here and watch all that.
No, but we've got to get it started. And
we got it started. And then we're going to take the foil off. It'll bake for another 30.
Okay.
So that one's going to be a little while.
So you're started on that. My sauerkraut is humming along, and I am going to add, this is a touch that Hungarians do and some Czechs, you add some jam and you add a little sweetness to this kraut. A lot of people don't like kraut because it's a little acidic. I love it. And my family had it a lot with pork and boiled potatoes or dumplings, things of this nature.
Are those fennel seeds you put in it?
No, a little caraway, and I know it's a kind of a real jolt against the sweet, semi-sweet jam, but that's kind of the way it's going to be. And so I'm slicing some kiwis to add to our display here. And what else are you up to?
Well, I thought while we got everything in the oven, we might want to take a little break for refreshment. So I thought I'd make a Kir Royale.
Oh, what a nice thing to do.
And so that is just a little bit of creme de cassis in the bottom. And again, all the recipes will call for an exact amount. Anything in the kitchen can generally be done by feel. Cook it to your taste.
Right.
Don't feel a recipe is a guideline.
Right, and that's only if you know what your taste is and you know what you can do.
You have to practice a little bit. So the first time I make something, I follow the recipe, and then after that, it's
do whatever you wish.
So a little creme de cassis in the bottom, and then you top it up with some sparkling wine. This is a California champagne.
And you're calling it the right word though, sparkling wine.
Yes, because anyone with a French background would take objection to
go,
California. You can't have a California champagne.
No, because it comes from the Provence of Champagne, which only exists in France.
But you know you have it right when it has that nice light rosé
Oh, isn't
color.
that beautiful? And this is something that I call a coupe royale. It's like a royal blow. So you can do a lot with the
So a standard
Kir.
Kir is just creme de cassis and white wine.
yes.
But I like the effervescence from a sparkling wine. It cuts the sugar a little bit. So I use that.
Oh, Doug, I do too. I love the effervescence. Very good. Let's have a toast. To the future
That's not dystopian.
that's not dystopian. Ooh, this book, you know, it's growing on me because you discuss it so well and make it ever so clear. And I'll take a sip. Festive, very festive. I wanted to say that we understood now what Clara's role is. We know what Josie's family is up to. We know that Rick will not be able to go to be lifted. They don't have the money.
Right. And so as close of friends as they are now, they will not have similar life paths. They're
Right.
going to diverge.
And this happens when you look back in your own high school experiences. You sometimes don't see some of your good friends for years, but not because of this dystopian idea. It's just you go for different interests. But this is specifically because you're being separated. Oh, he got the sign to get started on the
So I
pie here,
thought-
and he's doing it.
We have time. We'll whip up a key lime pie really quick, which everyone seems to love them. They're very simple to do. I'm cheating a little bit and using a store-bought crust,
Yay!
but I think that's legit.
I do too. You know what? When we started this show, I think it was like 21 or 22 years ago, many of us didn't cook.
Right.
And I don't remember you doing a lot of cooking, but maybe you did, we just didn't talk about it.
I
But
didn't-
here you are, cooking up a storm all the time.
I like to cook, but
I
generally
know
for
you
others. I mean, left to myself, I eat like an unsupervised 8-year-old. And I have no problem having Skittles and Mountain Dew as breakfast.
Well, I had.
But I do like to cook for others.
Well, you know, it's the mundane is like, you know, what are we going to have now, no, then tonight, you know, but, oh, we're going to have somebody over. Oh, we'll try something special. So you're cracking some eggs here.
And separating them.
You're separating them. Oh, you are separating them.
Now, for
Do
a key
you need
lime
another
pie,
bowl?
actually, I probably could use another.
Yeah, I kind of thought so.
I wasn't sure we were going to get to this and
Yes, you never know.
didn't plan as well as I could have.
This is a very productive kitchen. So now we're talking about Josie and Clara. They are friends. Clara entertains her, listens to her. She doesn't give her advice unless asked. And she gets to know the mother. The mother looks at Clara like, could she be a substitute for my daughter if she dies?
Right.
And so we
And-
get to that point, and what happens that blows up?
Well, it doesn't so much blow up as it was unnecessary.
Yes.
So they take Clara out to Mr. Capaldi and take Josie as well to talk about a portrait, supposedly, that's being commissioned. And the portrait turns out to be Clara, who's being programmed to mimic Josie so that if worst comes to worst and Josie dies, her consciousness or much of her mannerisms can be uploaded into Clara.
Have we had a book or a movie like that yet?
You've seen some. I think you can go back all the way to Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and you get some of that where the robot becomes alive.
Yes.
And you know, I guess you could take it all the way back to Pinocchio as sort of an idea.
Yep.
Although it's that's very different.
Well, I think it's a very interesting book. And we talk about the lifting. We talk about Josie. Josie goes off to school. She and Rick no longer are the big couple, love each other.
Again, their paths have,
And this
have
happens
diverged.
in life anytime. It doesn't. You don't have to be AI
And
for
Rick's
that.
mom tries to pull some strings to get Rick into a decent school. with an old flame that's
And what does she do to sabotage that?
Well, it didn't really get sabotaged, except the old flame points out that you had no use for me
Yes.
for years until you
she's-
needed to get your kid in school.
And that's why she sabotaged herself. She
Yeah.
didn't plan ahead, and then she gets angry, and maybe he would have been admitted because he's really quite bright. And so we have an ending too that makes us think, what happens to former?
Well, in
what
this
do you-
case,
what do we call Clara? An
Clara-
AI.
and it's interesting because a lot of people might refer to her as a robot.
Yes.
Most times she's referred to as an android. And it's interesting because the word robot comes from a Czech play from the early part of the 20th century.
Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly
Okay.
who the playwright
I don't
is,
either.
but it's a play called Rossum's Universal Robots, RUR. And that was the first use of the word robot.
So, you've
And-
learned so much today, yes.
And that term really is sort of what we use for a machine that can run an autonomous program that can perform its function without human intervention. But even a player piano can do that.
Yes.
So as we've gotten to more software-based artificial intelligence, and you can go into any factory and see robots putting cars together or what have you.
And people losing their jobs.
And people losing your jobs. We've come up with other terms, so android or synthezoid or humanoid, depending on the artist that's using them. But it's still the same theme. Where is the line between a human and a machine? What is it that makes software not alive,
Yes.
even when it seems smarter than humans who are alive? What really is the difference?
And what is it that should be replaced by a machine and that which should be protected for humans?
And so really it does talk to what is the essence of humanity. And in this case, it's interesting because at the end of the book, as Clara goes off to college, it's clear she's going to be okay. She's going to
Yes.
have a good life. And Rick is on a different path.
We don't know what
somewhat
happens to
ethically
Rick.
questionable path.
Yes. And then
But as she
What
gets it, Clara
happens
is
to-
no longer necessary.
she is no longer necessary. Nobody
And-
even picks her up. We don't hear about somebody else taking her in.
And no one wants a used artificial friend because new models are out. You don't want the old
we
model.
saw that in there
You want
too.
the new model for your kid. So Mr. Capaldi, who at one time was working on programming Clara to be a replacement for Josie, says he would like to basically dissect her, or vivisect
Oh,
her,
yes.
really.
Oh, vivisector. But what happens?
Mother steps in, and I thought that was a surprising bit of compassion for Clara's mom, and says, no, we're not going to take her apart, we're not going to disassemble her, we're not going to use her for research. She did her job. She literally earned her place in the sun. And they put her in the yard, which is a place for retired artificial friends where
Yes.
she can sit in the sun to absorb the power and
She's
be content with her
slowly
memories. And they call it a slow fade.
a slow fade. And it's kind of sad, isn't it?
In a way.
Well-
Although some friends from the past come back to talk to her. The manager from the store.
You want to pull anything out there?
Well, let's
You-
wait just a little
long.
bit.
Okay. So let's summarize. Did you like the book?
More actually than I expected as I read it. Because on the surface, it's a deceptively simple book. So I'm looking, I think a Nobel Prize winner, and I think of the vocabulary and the language, and I think of someone like Umberto Eco, where I have to get a dictionary after every paragraph.
Yes.
Because there's some word I've never come across.
Well, in some of these words we don't throw around in our everyday conversation, and,
Right.
and that's why I liked you to talk about dystopian. But so continue.
I think it's an excellent book because if you read it just a simple story, you could read this as a 12-year-old and get the story of Clara. You can read it critically as an adult and
Get the-
see a lot of deeper themes that are alluded to.
Yes, they don't seem so
And
wild
never
as
any answers,
Right.
just questions.
because we are to fill in some of those things ourselves. Well, we have come to an end here. We have our food. Here's the kielbasa with the sauerkraut and some
Well,
kiwis.
then let me get the kohlrabi.
Get the kohlrabi, and the pie is still baking. And let's see, I think you can put it right on here. This is the finished one. And then we say, come on down and have a meal with us. And thank you, Doug. Where are you? There you are. Thank you so much for joining me. And
Pie's still going to need about another 10 or 15 minutes.
yes, but at the same time, we have the time issue here. So here's the beautiful kohlrabi. Everything with K for Clara.
Okay, Clara.
And it's C. No, you're F. You're not a K.
No.
I'm not either.
Okay.
So let's have another toast to you and me. To us.
Salute.
Thank you very much. It's always
My
a pleasure
pleasure.
to have you. And remember, good food, good friends, good books, good drinks always make for a very good life. We'll see you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Dinner and a Book is supported by the Rex and Alice A. Martin Foundation of Elkhart, celebrating the spirit of Alice Martin and her love of good food and good friends.